What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, 2020 podcast news and 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I am also the host of the only online show for dads and fathers in the world that is sponsored by Dove Men Care, and it's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And realize that I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and this is the place for Epic Conversations. We're broadcasting live on January 10th. And most Sundays, we have Black Canada Talking on, and Black Canada Talking is back. Took a little hiatus over the holiday season, and hope everyone is safe and doing the best they can during the conversation, and realize this is a live online event that provides Black Canadians to give their takes and POVs on subjects that are of importance to them. And most of the time, we wait till the end of the month to have our panel on, but we haven't seen them for a minute. I've missed them. I don't think they miss me at all, but I miss them and the audience misses them. So we've got Elle, Warren, and Cesar here. So let's welcome to the digital stage and let's say hello and welcome them back. So folks.
Oh, it's me first.
Elle Jones. Elle is here. Elle Jones. Cesar is here. Warren is here. This is good. And I'm going to say this publicly. Miss you all. Really looking forward. Hope you each have a good holiday season and looking forward to more enriched, enlightened, and uplifting and amplifying conversations from each one of you in the new year. And don't know what more I can say without starting to cry. No, just do that. But it's great to have you back. How were everyone's holidays?
It was good. It was good on my side. Oh, am I on mute? Oh, yeah. No, I'm here.
No, you're not. I'm not this year.
No, it was good. You know, it was different with the COVID reality and not being in the presence of family members like years before and friends. But, you know, thank God for Zoom chat and Skype and FaceTime and those beautiful things. Kids were still wanting their presents because Canada Post didn't go on strike. So, that was good.
Amazon,
yeah,
right?
There you go. Thank you.
Elle, Cesar, how was the holiday season for both of you?
Same thing for me, not being able to see family, which is a bit sad because my mother, of course, had to leave Trinidad when she was very young to go to school because there was no science for girls at the time. So she left home at like 15. And so one of the things in adult life is no matter where I've been in the world, she's always made sure that I'm home for Christmas because she missed so many years with her family. So this is really the first year that I haven't been able to go home. I've always gone. So it's sad in that sense. And I think that really affected my mom going through that. And I think it brought back a lot of that kind of trauma. But, you know, I taught her how to use Zoom, which is was 2020 teaching your elderly parents how to use the computer. So, you know, we pushed through that. And other than that, I apologize for my background. I haven't cleaned and I'm living on the floor. So I'm sorry, everybody, but
it's all good, Elle. It's all good.
It's a dirty house in the new year because it shows that you haven't put your stuff in order in the new year. But
we're all just trying to work through it and figure it out, Elle. So no worries. No worries. Cesar, yourself?
Hi, Dr. Vibe. Hi, Sister Elle, Brother Warren, and look in the background representing BI Media. And honestly, very glad to see all of you and to, get in touch again with all our sisters and brothers worldwide in what truly may seem like the 13th month of 2020, if I can put it that way. No, holidays for me were fine. I connected further with family members as the notion of family, notably in the couple, expands. So that's very welcome. I'm very glad of that. Zoom, indeed, technology being ever more present to connect with family overseas, as this year traveling was not the smartest idea, despite what some politicians decided to do. And how else can I put it? No, I'm very optimistic regarding not only the great conversation we're going to have, but in the work that we all do, the advocacy we all do for our communities, and each and every one of us, that this year is going to be an increase of everything that happened last year. And as such, I just remind our sisters and brothers to always pay attention to the importance not just of self-care, but community care, and as well to keep standing up for our people of all background, all shades, but truly to stand up and always take care of themselves.
Well put. So, you know what? One of the things is when you host these, you always like guests that do great segues when you don't have to do segues. So when you mention about the 13th month of 2020, after last Wednesday, I fully agree with you. It's like the 13th month of 2020. So we have to give each one of you some perspectives on what the heck happened in Washington last Wednesday. Who wants to start?
I say we keep our usual order. Warren, L, and I go last.
You see
All right,
that?
well,
Sneaky.
I've been nominated to go first. Well, no problem. I'll go first. There's so many things to say, and I'm sure the three of us will intersect at some point to bring it all together, and add some, valuable information to people's knowledge exchange this Sunday afternoon. Thanks for that video. Oh, this is new. I didn't know we do this. Okay, great.
That's why we wanted you back.
Yeah. So, the first thing is, and I'm going to use a lot of celebrities, particularly in the United States, who've been mentioning, if it were African descent people, there's no way in hell. And I'm going to be very upfront with wording here and intentional. There's no way in hell that any African descent person who is screaming Black Lives Matter is going to be able to even get on to Capitol Hill to do that. It's so what a coincidence and a time for this to happen in less than 4 months, maybe 5 months since the last protest, the Black Lives Matter protest in Washington, where we noticed that those protesters weren't even able to get through the gate of the White House or in Congress. They were heavily policed. Their bodies were treated as villains in regards to them trying to seek and scream for liberation, and it went on deaf ears. A lot of people died in comparison to the amount of people who died in the riots at Congress. And we also have to think about how power is traveling, really like that masculine there, Cesar. But we have to realize how power is traveling in these moments. Power in terms of accessibility to even be on Congress, to even have this riot. The powers that be, regardless if someone opened the door, there was a lot of memes that were going around. This one funny meme that I've been watching, all night last night, just getting a good chuckle at, where they let them in. They were letting the Rogers and the Karens in, regardless of whatever names you want to use. And I take nothing back in terms of the names I'm using, because that's who they were. And in saying that, it just goes to show how united white supremacy really is. I'm throwing a lot of things going on this. I guess my little rant here, because I've been thinking about this for some time now. This wasn't a, hey, you know what? Let's just get up one day and go to Congress. This was planned. Regardless if it was Trump leading the show, there was other people who were allowing this to happen in Congress, and these were politicians. These are police officers. These are security guards. We noticed that there was the police officers opening the fence for the for people or these rioters to get onto Congress. We even noticed that they were helping these rioters down the steps and holding their hands, making sure that they're comfortable. This just goes to show how deep white supremacy really is. And that's why we can't, as advocates and educators, we cannot let off the pedal when we're advocating for our rights. We can't, because this is an example that they're not letting off the pedal, and they've been going full steam ahead for the last 400 years plus. We have to consider what our bodies mean in these moments. We can't just take an Abdi Rahman Abdi or a George Floyd and say, okay, well, yeah, it happened, and move on. No, we when we do that, and we just set the tone of moving on, we are also telling white supremacy, hey, we've forgotten about it, so they can now continue their march, which they've been doing strategically. Look at the education system, look at the jail systems, look at different systems of institutions that are entrenched in white supremacy and money. This is definitely capitalism at its best as well. This is definitely neoliberalism at its best as well. this is definitely white supremacy. So we have to consider why we're having these conversations and how we're going to mobilize, particularly African descent people, not to not acknowledge indigenous peoples, particularly in Canada, who are facing extreme measures of social oppression. There's no water in certain parts of Ontario for indigenous peoples, right? Now, the priorities in our Western societies is completely out of whack. Our priorities is to ensure white supremacy is upheld at all times, and we've seen that at Congress, and we're seeing that here in Canada. We're seeing that around the world. So I know I've added a lot there, and I'm not going to dominate more because I would like to hear what Ella and Cesar has to say. So I really appreciate me going first. Thanks, Cesar, for nominating. Go ahead.
You're never dominating. You're always worried about dominating, and you're never dominating. You're always providing analysis. Thank you. Just to add to that, I think we can't ignore as well that this white supremacist backlash is in the context of less than 24 hours earlier. Of course, Georgia was shifted to Democrat due to the black vote. And we know that this kind of backlash, and we can obviously debate and have debated on this show already. We had, that big discussion with people from America about what the election meant that we had after Election Day. But one of the things obviously we saw in Georgia is how the power shifted to the black community in that vote. Due to people like Stacey Abrams doing a really successful get out the vote measure. And I don't think we can ignore that context for why white supremacists are out in a particular force the next day on Capitol Hill. It's not only because Trump called them, right? It's a particular show of power. It's interesting, of course, how people immediately get claims to innocence or excuse. So you have all these people saying, well, you can't ignore the class dynamic and economic anxiety. And they're not wearing shirts that say $15 minimum wage now. They're wearing shirts that say 6 million wasn't enough, and they're flying Confederate flags, right? This isn't about economic anxiety. If it was an economic anxiety march, then we would see banners that reflected, calls free wages, more wages, calls for the Supreme Court to give workers overtime. And that's certainly not what they were marching for. And as people have pointed out, the Confederate battle flag made it further into the Capitol than it's ever made it, even during the Civil War, right? So these kind of symbols, which is also really interesting. You have people that on the one hand claim patriot, and on the other hand are flying seditious flags of the South, that quite literally, of course, lost the war against America. So it's also really interesting how in one breath you get this claim of America, USA, 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 and on the other hand, this investment in these symbols that are fundamentally anti-American. Some people have pointed out that the last time you saw this kind of violence on the floor of these buildings was in fact the beating of what's his name, the guy that was the anti-slavery senator from Missouri, who got caned almost to death by Preston Brooks, set up by pro-slavery Democrats, right? So he had made a speech about slavery, in particular talking about rape during enslavement and really emphasizing how depraved sexually slavery was. And that the Southern people took so much offense that they beat the SH out of him and nearly killed him on the floor of the Senate while other people ran interference. So that draws connections to what Warren has also here. And every time you see this violence, there's a consistency, the Confederate flag beating people for being anti-slavery. And then of course in 2021, coming out flying swastikas, flying Confederate flags. As a show, the last thing I'll say is I fell down the deep rabbit hole of pro-Trump media. So I've been reading all their sites, which is a really, really interesting rabbit hole. So half of them can't decide if it was Antifa or them. So, which is also really interesting because when it's convenient, BLM/Antifa gets talked about as this organized, violent army of people that are globally in control of the world. And BLM's 98% teachers and ordinary people wearing a shirt that is go to protest. But when it's convenient to them, they imagine BLM as this jack-booted, fully militiaed, armed movement that they're standing against. So that's interesting. But they can't decide if it's Antifa that did it or if they did it. So that's really interesting because then they're don't defame this great patriot by saying she was Antifa, she was a patriot. But then they're also full of conspiracies that convince that Trump is being kidnapped by the military and is being flown around on military planes to different bunkers because so when he said, I'll march with you, some of them feel betrayed that he didn't march with them. But then other people are that's because he's being kidnapped by the military and his family can't speak out. So that's really interesting. And then you also, so it's really interesting, looking at the ways that So some people are now saying the woman who died, Ashley Barrett, was a plant and it's a false flag. So it's actually very frightening, as well as sort of funny, but frightening to see how in these radicalized spaces, this discourse, like how they explain and talk to themselves about this is really frightening, right? That they believe they're winning. They believe that Trump is still with them. They believe that he's still going to be inaugurated. They believe that, you know, the military is going to come through for them. You know, and then you also have these posts of people saying, oh, I'm on my way back from Washington, and like where they are. So it's like, I recommend reading their stuff. It's like actually a really frightening one on like where things are right now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the other thing is that what we also have to be careful of, because obviously this has nothing to do with us as Black people. We weren't present, but in the laws that are going to be passed in the aftermath, we know those are going to rebound on us. So, you know, they're talking about domestic terrorism, but we know they'll never take white people seriously. The fact that they were able to organize openly for months, not just on Twitter, but on like Parlay or whatever that place is that they have, Parler, I don't know how you say it, Gab, you know, they have their own media, the Donald.win, you know, they have their own places where they were in the open, you know, calling for insurrection, calling to hang Mike Pence, calling to kill traitors, calling to set up guillotines. And they were allowed to do all that completely uninterrupted, and then show up in Washington completely uninterrupted, and then be led into the Capitol and directed to people's offices, you know? So like, yeah, I mean, it's nothing to do with us, but as they pass laws, then we know it'll be like the next one of us that hashtags something like ACAB will be the ones facing 10 years, not them. So I think as appalled and horrified as we are by this, as we should be by this like demonstration of, you know, the open, violent white supremacy of America, I think we also have to be careful at the opportunism of the other people in power, the neoliberal powers, which include the Democratic Party as well, that are capitalizing on this to pass a bunch of repressive laws that will, I think, ultimately impact Black people the most. They want to take us out. They want to get rid of environmental activists. They want to get rid of BLM. They want to get rid of anti-capitalist people. And we should be very, very careful about the laws that are going to be passed, supposedly about these crackers, you know, because it's not going to be them that they'll throw the book at like some symbolic members of them. But overall, long term, that's going to be our privacy, our rights, our communications, our ability to organize, everything that's going to be hit by this. So as usual, we weren't present. We have nothing to do with this. But in the end, long term, the brunt is going to be on us. And I think we have to be very vigilant of the kind of policing that's going to come out of this. So sorry, I talked really long as well. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, you guys haven't been on for a bit. There's a lot to just, let alone this incident, there's a lot to catch up on. So
yeah,
so
you know, the last, I wanted to, sorry, Cesar, I don't mean to take your shine away, but, you know, Elle mentioned something that's very important that we all need to recognize, I think, in regards to how they were able to mobilize. You know, this was strategic. They were doing this in the open. And you have to consider that, you know, considering that Trump was able to, you know, tweet for 4 years the way he was able to do, you know, they're able to organize, as Elle mentioned, online with no disruption, right? Like, this is not just a group saying, hey, let's get together and just us. There's more people that's aware what's going on, and they're allowing them to do this. So we have to consider that as well. There's the main group, and then there's subgroups that are participating in the push for this white supremacist movement that we're seeing. So sorry, I just want to just acknowledge it because that was really important.
Quickly, yeah, that there's been exposés on the dark money, the Republican money that went into this, that funded this co-sponsors, and it's not fringe stuff. This is, as Warren's pointing out, this is mainstream, like the Republican Attorney General Society. You know? Like the people that were their state legislators, that guy from West Virginia that was into the state legislator and has a history of harassing and attacking women at abortion clinics. So much so that a judge passed an injunction on him, being like, you're violent, harassing, and a stalker, which in West Virginia, you have to be pretty serious if a Republican judge is going to be censoring you. So he was allowed to be elected to, you know, the state Senate and then go to Washington. These are Air Force veterans. These are, you know, police officers. I don't know if you saw the story where a bunch of police forces are now investigating if their officers are present because the Capitol Police said people showed them their military and police badges. And we've long known that the military and the police are sites of white supremacy. So I won't take any more time, but Warren makes a really important point that everybody's now scrambling to pretend it's just a fringe group of wackos and saying, you know, oh, it's just white trash, it's just rednecks, it's just hillbillies. But it isn't. It's powerful people who were and are within the mainstream of the Republican Party. And everyone's throwing up their hands and saying, oh, no, it wasn't us. It wasn't me. But it was them. And we can't let people get away with that either, just pretending that it was just some bad apples, as always happens when white people commit violence. It's always bad apples, right?
Cesar?
What can I say? My brother Warren and my sister Elle said it all. They're 100% correct. I mean, I'm going to give a few different perspectives, but to be honest, this is really the hypocrisy of America. It's moral hypocrisy, but also institutional and so-called claim of democracy and freedom, in plain sight for all to see. And when I say all, I include our sisters and brothers who wish they could wake up white one day, aka the Candace Owens and too many other race traitors among us in the claim of free thinking. What I mean by this, what happened on the Capitol is stole shine from what happened in Georgia. The first black senator, but also a Jewish senator in a state with such history of racism, of lynching blacks, but also killing Jews. If I can give, before we go too much further, a Canadian perspective, we also have to be careful. The fact that this happened really shows the systemic racism in all institutions of the United States, the participation of police, because when you have, this is not a matter of secret services. How are you going to explain that me here in Canada, I knew about January 6th just from being online? There are plenty of people who fully knew, and yet there was a lack of preparation from the police, and as such, complicity from opening gates to selfies. Yes, a police officer got killed. Yes, we saw a video of one who got crushed, but quite simply, as even someone as Joe Biden recognized, and I'm not using Joe Biden as a proof of what I'm saying, all of us, black people, but also indigenous people and people of color fully knew if these were black people or indigenous people, it would have been a bloodbath that also would have been justified with none of these cops or military being jailed for it. But because they were white, because, these are the Karens and the Kens, they got the doors open for them all the way to carry the lecture of Nancy Pelosi. But we must not lose focus on the Canadian element, which is that right here in Canada, we have people like the Gavin McGuinness, aka co-founder of the Proud Boys. He's Canadian. We have Faith Goldie. But we also have a certain Maxime Bernier, aka Trump of the North. We have all these elements right here in the Canadian society that dream of nothing more but to take things one step further than a certain Erin O'Toole, aka there's no racism in the Conservative Party. Look at the map of the elected people, the cabinet, and denying systemic racism as a certain prime minister by the name of François Legault in Quebec. So all the elements for the same situation are here. And when I say here, let's be honest, a certain Alexandre Bissonnette will shot people in the mosque. That's here in Canada. But at the same time, when we look at the indigenous issues regarding the fisheries in Nova Scotia, that's here in Canada. We don't need to go through the names of the list, such as the Abdi Rahman Abdi. We all know the systemic racism that's right here and the denial that happens when it's white people who are even caught on camera, aka a certain Justice Kelly in the case of Abdi Rahman Abdi, saying that the burden of proof was not sufficient, despite the fact of, we all know if this was a black police officer who had killed a white man, such as Abdi was killed, that black police officer would have been condemned. To go further, what I really liked about the situation is how ironic it must be for African dictators, aka those people from the shithole countries, to see how America is indeed a shithole country by the very standard of the Trump said it. No, I don't believe America is a shithole country. But when someone like Trump says it, his handling of the coronavirus, social issues, everybody is, they're basically fine boys to kind of not lose the support of the white supremacists. So when you see all of these elements and you finally see what happened Wednesday, it was long time foreseen. This is 2021, aka Charlottesville 2016, where that young white ally got killed.
Dylan Roof.
Airline roof. This was so predictable. So it's a full failure of the system. It's a further exposure, if it was even needed. It's a further exposure of the system of his biases. And as such, I'm sorry, Russia and China are right to make fun of the US. But one of the things I must say, this must be a good lesson for us as Black people. We don't need it. We already knew that it would be different treatment, but a good lesson for us to stand up even more proud, to not, as Warren was saying, to never give up, to never think things are better, to not wait for the next hashtag, because the next hashtag can be each and any one of us.
Nice.
Did you see the president of Zimbabwe tweeted and was like, well, obviously you guys should stop interfering in our elections because like you can't.
Clearly.
And so
clearly.
And like people in Bolivia, like, so one of the things that's been so galling for the US is how they really love to believe that there's still this shining light, or wherever this shining light of democracy around the world, and they're getting trolled by like everybody in the country.
I saw two memes that really spoke very well also to what you're saying, El. I saw one meme of the Iraqi army on Pennsylvania Avenue coming to protect the freedom of Americans. Another meme of Osama bin Laden saying, "You mean I could have just come through the front door?"
My favorite meme was the guy in the horns and the fur, and someone's like, whose auntie is sleeping with this man?
No, it's sad, you know, when you think there are people that, and I'm going to say this, I cannot give my sympathy to that Cameron who died, not because I celebrate her death, but because I know far too well the people who were there, there are no there feeling sorry for our people when they get killed by those white cops. You know, the famous Blue Lives Matter people, the White Lives Matter people. There's a sister by the name of Nebo in LA who got harassed by one of those crowds.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that.
And a quick reminder, because I promised myself not to forget to say her name. Miriam Carey, 2013, shot 18 times as she had a traffic infraction in front of the White House. She ran away. The fear, we know about the trauma of Black people dealing with police. Through the chase, the end of the chase was her being shot 18 times with her baby in the back seat. So we completely see how white supremacy treats very differently the infractions of Black people, usually in the name of justice, are motivated by fear to survive, versus the infraction of whites. In this case, people who are not accepting the results of an election, people who willfully got manipulated. And I say willfully because you will notice all of these white supremacists who are being arrested, the interviews are being made of the family and friends saying they got radicalized through Trump and their allies. So Trump, just as his henchmen, you know, Hitler and the henchmen, that show on the History Channel, Trump and his henchmen, they deserve to go to jail. They deserve to go to jail.
The question is, will they though?
Well, this is the test of white supremacy.
Well, I don't think it's a test. We've been seeing this for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is, I think the testing is now done, respectfully said, not to ignore what you're alluding to, Cesar. Like, this is just the beginning. You know, I think what we need to really pay attention to is the transfer of power in that country, right? How is Biden going to respond to this as the new incoming president? He's responded as the electoral president, saying he's denounced the actions of white supremacy, and you know, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. He has mentioned that if it were Black folk, this would be in a different situation. But as the sitting president next week or 2 weeks from now, what is going to be his response to this? You understand what I mean? What is going to be the actionable items that he's going and his administration is going to put in place for this not to happen again? That's what we need to be focusing on, if in terms of testing. Let's test what's going to happen.
I want to add two other things with what Warren said. First of all, who knows what's going to happen between now and Inauguration Day? Right? Because something tells me there's another thing to come.
Yeah.
Well,
and also, and another part, and another thing too is the way that and I don't say his name, I just call him 45. The way that he has put so many judges who are Republican based in the American judicial system, he's won. He's won, right? He's got all the people he has in place. Plus, he's got 70 million people who like him.
You know, I'd like to add something right there, Dr. Vibe. You said something that's very, very, very important for us to recognize, right? He has injected himself into the system.
For years to come. Has
anybody seen The Dark Knight with the Joker? All right. This is exactly what the Joker did in The Dark Knight. Right. Trump is the Joker in our reality. That's what has happened. If you pay attention to that movie, which is one of my favorite movies, by the way, the Joker set everybody up. He set up Harvey Dent to be the fallen white knight and be this criminal. And if that was to happen in the movie, then all chaos would have started. Batman knew that. Jim Gordon knew that. They all knew it. So that's why even after Harvey Dent died, Two-Face, they had to cover it up, his actions, his dark actions up, and Batman took the fall. Hence the reason why he went to hiding, if you paid attention to that movie. Trump did the same thing. Even though he was coming out, and he didn't want to come out, but he injected himself into the system, his ideology, that's what I mean, not himself physically, his ideology into the system by putting players in certain places and writing laws that even if they wanted to untangle those laws, it'd be very difficult for them to do.
Right. That's right.
So we need to understand, again, what the white settler colonial moments are doing to us and continues to do to us. It's deep entrenched into our education, into our politics. And this is Trump's a way of deepening that injection into the American political scene.
And there
I just got one more quick thing I'm going to jump out, because usually I don't get involved, but I want to just lay some other things. One of the words that us as Black people use a lot is legacy, right? Legacy. 45 has made sure his legacy is going to last for hundreds of years.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Look he's got Republicans on the Supreme Court. He's got it weighed to that. So the gall of Republican senators saying they're trying to separate the action with him. They're all the same. They're all the same. And I want to get each one of your thoughts. When you hear Americans say, "This is not us," what do you have to say to them?
Oh, please go ahead, because I
mean, what's ironic, funny, horrifying, and all of this, of course, is you get these very serious editorials being written like, "This will dent our world standing, and now we won't be a light of democracy for the world." And I'm like, did you miss the whole part where you've interfered with CIA have killed our leaders, you've interfered with our elections, you've destabilized our economies, you've blocked our trade. So there's this delusional. So, I mean, this is what someone once said, the best war is one, and you can hate both sides. And I somewhat feel this way about this one. You're very critical, obviously, of these white supremacists storming the Capitol, but also then the mendacity, the cowardice of the people that are the mainstream in the party that now want to disown those people and then act like there is this idea of America that they cling to, as though they didn't spend the summer brutalizing and tear gassing protesters, as if they didn't use the military to clear a path to Trump so he could go fake pray at a church with an upside down Bible, as though those things are disconnected. Now that everyone's like, this moment, what a shock, and of course, it's all of America's violent political history. I think the other thing you really see that's concerning, and it's on all sides, a particular politics of nihilism, right? That people don't really believe they can get change. So people don't really want to organize for change. And I think we're living in this age on all sides, very exemplified by social media. At the same time as this was going down, and I'm not doing horseshoe theory where I'm trying to say the left is the same as the right. What I'm saying is that there are symptoms of people's political engagement. So I don't know if you followed Force the Vote that was going on in the left, where people were trying to get the squad to not vote for Nancy Pelosi and hold a floor vote for Medicare for all in return, basically, for like allowing her to be speaker. And it didn't happen. It just came off like people started, Jimmy Dore and others started doing it on Twitter. But what was really interesting about it is you got people whose entire politics, and I'm not debating the strategy of the thing or that. I'm saying that there was this interesting thing where people were like, well, now we've exposed the fraud. You know, now we know they're fake and they're sellouts and they're frauds. And I'm like, and what? What does that mean for you? What does exposing people mean? And then you're seeing the same thing on the right where they're like, no, Trump was playing 3D chess because he exposed that Pence was a traitor now. And I'm like, okay, so you know Pence is a traitor. Like, now what? You know, and I think for a lot of people that, especially because so much of our politics is being done on social media, people don't actually know what to do. Because we live in these times, this goes to our year wrap up, right? Where people have like lost their businesses, lost their homes, you know, a lockdown, like the neoliberal consensus, the loss of jobs. And I'm not using that as an excuse for white supremacy. I'm saying that we badly as a world are going to need to organize. And because people don't know how to do that, people go into this direction. I think that's a very hopeless direction, which is like, all we can do is sort of scream about it, but we don't know what we're going to do to fix it. And I think you're very much seeing that. I think a lot of what's going on in America is really just people don't believe in anything. So they're believing in like cult figures and this conspiracy. So I watched a whole video last night, like the QAnon conspiracy, where it's literally like Trump, the Q guy will be like, watch what Trump says about the military. And then inevitably Trump will make a speech where he mentions the military. And then they'll do like this number thing where they're like, he said the military at like, you know, minute 13 in the speech. So that means on the 13th day, he's going to call it. It's like almost like this mystic, like numerology where you can like twist anything to make it become something that you can now believe in. So they're saying that his concession speech, when he said like a smooth, orderly, and secure transition of power, he's saying SOS. So he's sending a message to them that they need to, you know, and I'm like, there's something going on here where people need that. Like, where you need to believe in this figure and need to constantly believe, like, you'd rather pick apart a speech for which word is here and what it might secretly mean than like organize against your like congressperson to like get a check, you know? So yeah, I mean, that was a long answer, but no, I mean, America's always been violent. This is the actual face of America. And what's sort of gross and where I guess I do feel for the patriots, like is the patriots, you know, the insurrectionists, is how thoroughly they then got abandoned by the same people who used, exploited, called them there. And then when they realized they were a liability, how quickly they got thrown overboard, but they won't learn a lesson from that, you know, that like they're still diehards, you know, and it's like sad in that sense, like how people in power use the people, you know, the cynical, opportunistic. Hawley and Cruz are Yale and Harvard educated lawyers. You know what I mean? They know this stuff isn't true. And they go along with it because they want to get voted in and they believe they need this particular base. And they're happy for people to die and they're happy for people to lose their livelihoods and families and people to be radicalized and people to commit violence. They're happy for all of that if it gets them, you know, a little bit more power. And that's where I guess I have some empathy for some of these people because I'm like, they would run me over with a car as soon as look at me. But like when you think about how disgusting it is that people that they trust and look up to and really believe was saving them from something, and like the abortionists and the Marxists and the BLM and all of this, and how those people just so cynically are like, come here, oh no, now you're a liability, so we're all going to denounce you. Like they don't even have the courage to support their own people. You know, they don't eat, like when our people get shot, we stand with them, you know, we don't denounce them. And like, you know, they can't even, now they're saying their own people that got killed were false flags because they can't even own the thing they were doing. And I think that says something really sad too. And this is a really long answer. I'll shut up. Okay, now I'm leaving Aaron by apologizing for talking.
No, Dr. Vibe, look, Al said it so well. America has always been violent. America, you know, when the events of Wednesday, when some notably journalists, as on CNN, but even, I mean, I like him personality-wise, former governor and, of course, Mr. Olympia, Arnold Schwarzenegger said, this is not the America. And then you have others such as European leaders, this is not the America. We know it's a lie. This is the America as it is. America, as every country from Canada to Brazil, has been created upon the genocide of indigenous people and the enslavement and systemic racism of Black people, along racism as through immigration of people of color. I mean, this is the same America where patriots, 1776, they kept my people, our people, Black people of every shade in slavery for about 90 years. And when the Civil War happened, Abraham Lincoln did not do the Civil War because of some great morality about Black people. Abraham Lincoln was a segregationist. It always makes me laugh when I see photos. When I say laugh, understand, it's in sadness. When I see photos of well-meaning brothers and sisters take photos next to Abraham Lincoln, not knowing that the men clearly viewed Black people as inferior. It's just that economically talking, slavery was no longer sustainable in the mid-19th century of the industrial age. That's it. That's all. America has always been violent. I mean, this is the same America where basically, I know I'm going to get controversial here because we know how in the Black community there are three people that you are not allowed to criticize, aka Jesus or Allah, Beyonce or Michael Jackson, and Barack and Michelle Obama. But let's be honest, the first Black president, skin color, Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown died under his presidency, and he didn't do much for Black America in the same sense that he still bombed. He bombed Africa for false reasons, which were clearly imperialistic reasons, aka Gaddafi and the mess that he has created today all over Western Africa, such as Boko Haram, because those weapons are from Libya. America is a history of violence. I am not insulting that nation. I believe there are great things to celebrate about America. I am an African-born, European educated, European raised, who parents brought him to America, and I have a lot of American culture in me, especially Black American culture. However, we need to have that honest conversation in terms of what is the history, the politics, the economics, and the society of America and the Americas, from Canada to Brazil, from the lens of Black people. It is basically the story of marginalization, oppression, violence, exclusion, that very history that explains why COVID-19 disproportionately affects and kills Black people from Canada, as in Toronto, to Brazil, passing by the United States. America is an empire. So allow me to give you, true to my name, Cesar, an example of what America is. Some people, and I heard this from some journalists, to compare Donald Trump to Nero, aka Rome burning, and Rome, the US, the Capitol burning, and Donald Trump watching it on TV. If not, he would have been on the golf course in Mar-a-Lago. But before Nero, there was a Caligula. Before Trump, there was a Nixon. However, after Nero, there was a Commodus. Commodus, aka Gladiator, the movie. There was a Commodus. Imagine what's going to come after Trump. Because, as I said in a CBC interview 2 years ago, in 2018, and this may offend some people, but that's okay. Let's be constructive in our thinking here. Donald Trump is the best thing that has happened in terms of race relations for a very, 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 very long time, because his racism, his discrimination is so in your face that you have to take sides. And yes, we have seen some Black celebrities go for photo ops and justify whatever reason by which they are standing by him. We have heard the Republicans praise the fact that they've never gotten such high minority/Black vote. But you see, when Republicans are talking about the fact that the elections were fair, it's another way of saying too many Black people voted. They did not succeed in voters limitation and for voter suppression, and for this success to our sister Stacey Abrams, but also her sister, who is a judge, Judge Gardner Abrams, who was not nominated by the Republicans. We need to show that support to all our grassroots movements that stood up, that kept fighting, that didn't give up in 2016. Imagine in 2016 if we had 500 or 5,000 or 50,000 Black people going to walk on the Capitol because this racist person, Donald Trump, aka since the 70s, regarding housing discrimination, in the 80s, 90s, the exonerated five, birthing regarding Obama. This man has a long history of racism. So the populist that he is, aka anything for Donald, what just happened is just a reflection of empire, just as happened in Rome, just as happened in Nazi Germany. So this is just a step further into the fall of America. Because every empire falls. Donald Trump just advanced the fall of America by a few years, maybe decades, for all that he succeeded in implementing himself into the system. Just bringing further the fall of America. That's all it is.
Warren, anything else you want to add before we do a recap of 2021?
I think what we, I would like to encourage the three of us or four of us to chat about what we should do as African descent or Caribbean, Black, however term you respectfully want to side with. What can we do to be vigilant this coming year? I think we do a great job in reciting what's going on in the public eye. We do a great job in reciting historical facts. The four of us, we do that amazingly. And one thing I want us to really encourage is what can we give people in this moment right now for them to take on and reflect and place it into their normal way of living going forward. I think that's what we should really focus on, and something that maybe we can do in each episode going forward. And I'm sure people are taking a lot of what we're saying and this new information, or it's revisiting information that they maybe forgotten or weren't thinking about in the moment. So I think we do that indirectly, but I think we should be intentional with it going forward, because as Cesar said, we're living in some very, very weird times. If this is the fall of the empire, or is this strategic to remain, keep white supremacy intact the way that it's shaping up to be, then what can we offer our Black communities? I think that's what we should be doing. I'll start. I think one of the things that we should definitely be focused on encouraging is solidarity. We need to focus on looking at our Francophone brothers and sisters as equal. There's too much. That's the language barrier between our African descent communities is what's killing us. We also need to look at the gender conversation. There's too many divide between. I'm only respectfully saying male and female, or masculine and femininity in this conversation, not to discredit any other genders within the Black community. But as a matter of fact, let me just group them all into what I'm about to say. There's too much divide in terms of let's just be woman empowerment and not men empowerment, or vice versa, in too many social spaces. We need to focus on solidarity, understand what that word really means in our communities, because there's a lot of people not seeing the value and not seeing the I'll just go with value in our Black communities, which could sustain greater outcomes if we were able to work together and understanding what working together really means. Another thing is, I'm going to be very biased in what I'm about to say, and I think Ali you'd appreciate this. It's education. We need to start seeing education as a valuable tool in our Black communities. There's too many of our young Black youth are facing anti-Black racism and a criminalization of their bodies, which is steering them into our prison system or our jail systems in this country. And they're not seeing the value of education because of those horrible situations or moments within this formal institution. We need to focus on that. We need to focus on building up our communities. If we don't, we are going to be the back of the line and facing a different circumstance of marginalization, which is going to be even worse if we don't figure things out in our community. So I'd like to start there, and please add.
No, that's great, Warren. I also think it's really important that even as we critique things, we also find ways to come up with a resilient frame, right? That we're always taught. Du Bois said this, like, how does it feel to be a problem? That we're always talked about as the problem, and then we internalize that. So we really need to, I think, as we speak about the problems we need to solve, we also need to have that frame of always putting it in a resilient frame for ourselves, particularly for our young people. Because we tend to be like, we're the only community that's this dysfunctional. We're the only community that does this. We're the only community that does this. And that's not true, of course, right? Like, people have frailties. But we're no worse than any other community. We have the same human problems that every community has. So I think, we have to really figure out how to build that up, I think, through big and small actions. It's impossible to take action and be organized if we fundamentally like don't see an end to it. Like, you know, if you're just like, well, what's the point of doing this because the prisons and cops and everything and they're going to be here at the end of the day, like then you can't really effectively organize, right? So I think we have to understand that. I also think that like we're going to have to figure out how to deal with power, you know, like one of the things, and this comes out of this summer, right? That we're in a sort of precipice where on the one hand, we have a big people's movement, you know, like where we're more and more thinking about issues that largely affect working class Black people, justice issues, the economy, like we're understanding that. But at the same time, we have very successful Black people like Kamala, like Barack, like, ministers in our own country. And we haven't come to terms as a community, like what that's going to mean once we have powerful people. Like, what is our responsibility? What is our accountability? How do we hold power to account? How do we like figure out, because things are changing, right? Like in our world, you know, Warren, like all the hires that have suddenly come out, you know, there's like 50 hires. So Black people all of a sudden in universities, like, so like for 2 years, we're going to have, you know, these kind of hires and these kind of things. But what does that mean? You know, how it's going to end, you know, like obviously it's nothing that has to do with us ever has any like long lasting. It's a short term thing, you know, but how are we going to build on that? What does it mean as our community changes, as our class relations change? What does it mean as we become so-called successful? What do we owe back? You know, these are, I think, really difficult questions, and they come very much out of 2020 as we're doing like the wrap up thing, you know, that on the one hand, we mobilized on, you know, a scale that we haven't often seen, you know, that like people really came out in the thousands and really wanted this change, but also we're sitting here where we didn't get that change, like, you know, and like, what are we going to do? Like, you know, are we in a lull? Are we rebuilding? Are people being bought off? Like, what is that, you know, like, what does that mean for us? You know, who better to lead than us? Agreed. And it has to be collective, right? We can't. So the same critique I made when I look at the Trump boards and they just are like waiting for some secret message in Trump's speech so that everything will be okay. And it's like, it's never going to happen. We have to make the world okay. You know, like nobody is going to lead us and nobody should be, like, we have to do that collectively. You know, we have to figure out, and that means doing those small actions. It means like, yeah, organizing. Are we organizing our tenants? Are we, when women are being abused, are we like helping them get set up in a new apartment? Are we, you know, like those are the things that build our resilience, our courage, and our ability to move forward. You know, I think we often sort of think about, again, our lack. And I think we need to ask ourselves questions like, when people have helped each other, what did we draw on? You know, in times when we've been successful as a community, what was it that we were able to do? You know, when we successfully did this thing, what did we draw upon? How do we find strength to stand up to power? Where does that come from? And how do we teach that to our youth? You know, like when people are sort of in this space where they're caught between two things, you know, like the streets and something else, or, you know, this or that, what do we build in them so that they can make that choice to go to something else or find the strength to do that, you know? And I think we really, moving forward as Black people, it's like, how do we find that? Like, where does that come from? That some people among us are able to like undertake just the acts of courage that exist in our community all over the place. People have sacrificed their lives, you know, people that, where does that come from? And how do we build that, particularly in our young people, so they feel equipped to go to school and be able to speak to their teachers and their principals, you know, that when they're walking on the streets and they're being stopped by the cops, like, what do we build in them? You know, like, so I think Warren's really right that there's the big political action, but political action also has to be that kind of daily way of building our resilience, building our courage, building our solidarity, teaching ourselves that we have power. And the last thing is, sorry, I'm talking long and I promise I'll shut up. People have pointed out that as Black people, we've been pushed into being social workers rather than politically organized. And as someone who does all that kind of social work with people in prison, I think that's true. We spend so much of our energy because we have to, like, you know, just talking to a kid or mentoring somebody, or, you know, and of course we need to do that because there's so many people in urgent need. And we all believe as a community that what you get, you give back. You know, I think everybody believes that fundamentally in Black people. We believe, you know, someone opened the door for me, it's my job to open the door. So we spend a lot of time on that. But what we don't spend time on is taking that and politically organizing into a political block so that we have a political voice. We do a lot of social work, but we don't do a lot of what does it mean to be a political block that they don't care about us because we're poor and powerless. And they know that not listening to us has no, Trump can't ignore these people, and he knows they're his base. The GOP has to play to them because they know they're the base. They get listened to. The crazy evangelical Christians, like the ones that are, like they get listened to. These people that storm the Capitol, they're being screwed over right now. But in the end, they're the 75 million base. They will be listened to and catered to. And we are not. So how do we build to a point where we have the kind of power and political power together, despite all our political differences, because we're not going to agree. Like, we have people on all kinds of the spectrum, but does that mean in Canada? We need a political bloc. And we've seen that, like, coming out of COVID, coming out of the BLM protests, coming out of everything. Like, we need to find a way to have a political voice that gets us what we need, and I don't know what that looks like. And now, Cesar, go ahead.
You brought up something that you touched on, Cesar. I just wanted to add, sorry, I'm just feeding off L today, and I'm not saying I'm not feeding off you, Cesar, because I'm feeding off both of you. Okay.
I'm not today. That's why.
But you mentioned something that it needs to be said. We do a lot of social working in our communities. There was this, I can't remember the name of this doctor, but this doctor in the United States had studied the reason why we're doing so much social work in our communities. It's the way how we organize and how in our political system within our communities. There's too many ideologies going on. One of the things that we do, he mentioned that we don't value the family structure enough. We don't value that we can't continue to put the labor power on the backs of women to raise our children the way we're doing. Okay, it's not to now villainize black men, but we need to figure that out. If you're thinking about it, a lot of our black youth who are experiencing the anti-black racism continuously in institutions, particularly formal education, they're not going home to homes that support them through it as well. We need to also figure that out as well. There's so many things, but I think if we can collectively understand how to have positive family relations, I think that's a start personally. So I just wanted to add what, the social worker piece, because Al brought that up. And I think we miss, not saying LU, but I think we as collectively missed that conversation to have, because we don't have it enough. It's not about outing our laundry. It's about talking about a reality that we need to focus on, so sorry, Cesar, I just wanted to mention that.
No, thank you, Warren. That was well said, and Al, always brilliant. What I can really add to what has already been said, I will take back some elements from my Black Lives Matter speech of June 5th in Ottawa, in terms of the fact that as Black people, we need to make Wakanda not just be a fiction. We need to be able to come back to a center of Blackness and make it real. What that means, Al said it very well, to not just be social workers catering to our community, but become political actors. Because the extremists, the white supremacists, the Trump fans of Wednesday at the Capitol, at the end of the day, they represent a strong electoral base, and they represent millions of voters, which is the reason why the Republican Party is so coward in standing up to Trump, because in 2 years and in 4 years, they need those people to vote for them. For us as Black people, we must, and I know this is very hard for many to hear, to understand, to accept, the reality of being Black in the current world that we live in is a reality in which we don't live with white people. We don't live with Arabic white people. We don't live with Asian people. We survive to the systems of domination. And when I say survive, even when you go to Africa and the Caribbean, you see the strength of the Chinese presence. We all know what happens when a white tourist complains or even seeks employment in our countries. It's a lot easier for them. So we are here surviving. There's nothing racist in what I'm saying. First of all, if you're Black, you can't be racist in this world. But the fact of the survival of Black people basically makes it that for us to rise, we must be able to evacuate the negative narratives about us, because when it comes to race, the focus is always about us, just as when it comes to religion in the Western world, the focus is on Arab Muslims. So when it comes to race, we must evacuate that. Warren is absolutely right about a focus that we must do ourselves regarding the family. The lockdowns of COVID have created an increase of domestic violence. We must denounce our homie, brother, partner that we know is abusing his girlfriend or wife and the kids. But we must not give a pass to our sister, our black woman, who is also abusive to a brother for whatever reason she can claim. We must do group economics. Supporting black business is not to say simply because they're black, but we must uplift the standards so that we support them, just as we must do more sharing of successful black people than keep sharing on the negativity and toxicity of too many entertainers, and not just entertainers, will pollute the minds of black children and black youth into us thinking we are only successful through sports and entertainment. Black professionals, I ask you, I demand of you, I beg you, mentorship. Be there to show the way to the youth, but also to other adults in showing them how to improve. This week, I had a brother, an older brother that I look up to as a mentor, make me aware of a certain flaw in my character that I can address to further my professional development, aka time management. And you know what? I listen to him. I will better manage it, because as busy as I can say I am, we are all busy. But we must be able to improve on everything we do so that we can rise by adapting, adjusting in order to advance. We must also educate ourselves. Educate ourselves is not celebrating that there's a black James Bond. Congratulations to the sister, but honestly, I don't care about that. I want to see not just a black Mozart as is coming in 2021. Chevalier de Saint-Georges was there before Mozart. So I want to see our black heroes, aka women and men, be brought to the screen. I want to see our children learn about them. I want to see why children hold black dolls, as you see behind me, but not just hold a black doll for a photo that looks cute, but hold a black doll and learn about black kings and queens and warriors and fighters for justice. Because Africa and the black history is full of that more than any other continent, my friend. Don't be fooled. Me, Cesar, Queen Amani Renas, stopped the Roman armies from going further south than Egypt. How many children know this? We must be able to focus on our spirituality. I know so many people hate when I bring religion. Black people, you will never be fully loved and accepted as equals in white or Arab religions. It will not happen. And they're not racist for it. We must be able to refocus on our spirituality, to reclaim our identities, to understand that Haiti, 1804, did not happen by praying to Jesus, but by finding strength in voodoo. Just as African spirituality was very much alive in the Candomblé and Brazil, in Cuba, etc., etc. All of these elements that, as we speak of 2021, of new beginning, we must be able to do all these things to change the narratives. Without giving his name, one of my mentees who went through a very hard time in 2020 because of some family drama that went to the news that involved police and the criminal world, I was so proud of him. He stayed in school. I supported him. But it's not about me supporting him. It's about some family members of his, some friends of his, all of us being there together to tell him, don't give up. You don't have to follow the path of your brothers. And he finished school. He got a job. He can be a change factor in any black community that he goes to because he has a baggage. Very quickly, just to finish, allow me to give some black intellectuals. We need to reconnect with our black intellectuals. Dr. Frances Cressing, Dr. Joyce DeGruy, speaking in terms of family, but speaking also in terms of post-traumatic slave syndrome. Frantz Fanon, Black Skin, White Mask, and The Wretched of the Earth. Cheikh Anta Diop, arm yourselves with knowledge so that you can speak as an equal to white supremacy. And last but not least, our hero, murdered, assassinated by white supremacy, played on screen by our brother Denzel Washington. Bantu Biko, he said it. The most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. We don't have to be the oppressed, but we have to be Black.
Dr. Vibe, you are muted.
And I am good now, though. I don't think I need to add anything after that. The only thing I will add is I was talking to Elle before we went live. There's a gentleman named D. Chanson Berry who had an epic conversation with a few weeks ago. And he said a number of prolific things. And I usually don't plug things on the Dr. Vibe show, but if you can, watch that conversation. It was epic. But one of the things, two things he said that really, well, a few things he said. One of the things he said is, and I'll say this for all our people out there, the strength of the spirit will always go further than the strength of the body. And another thing that I want Black people to start living instead of surviving. Too many of us are surviving out there. We need to band together, and some won't be able to, but many of us need to band together so we can start living instead of surviving. There's too many of us that are surviving out there, folks. And look where surviving has got us. Really, look where surviving has got us. So I don't want to add anything else onto that. I like to say thank you for each one of you. This is why I've missed you, because you make me feel better and you make me keep going. You're some of the people that keep me going on what I do. And I hope once in a while I keep you guys going, even if you don't like me once in a while. I want to make sure that you guys keep on going.
I just wanted to address, is that Sister Nee? Yeah, I mean, really, we are African people. I think that is an important point. The question, obviously, many of us call ourselves Black. We are all African, like we belong to Africa. We are from Africa. And we are part of the global African diaspora, and we are not less African for that. So I think that was an important comment that just came up, and I just wanted to say, I hear you. Like we really should be calling ourselves African people. But
African people, very much so. Any final comments from Warren, Cesar?
No, the only final comment I have is, please put into practice of, building our people up, including me. No one's exempt. We have to figure out ways. We have to listen. Not only just listen, we have to actively listen. We have to show up. And showing up doesn't mean that you have to give money. Doesn't mean that you have to, give, all this time that you may not have. It just means that show up when it matters. And that's what I'd like to finish off with.
Warren, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh boy!
I'll say it. Go to his website.
Yeah, well, you can if you want to get in touch with me, please. Like Dr. Vibe just mentioned, you can visit my website. All my contact information is there. It's warrenclarke.ca. So it's very easy. Clark with an E. Don't forget that. That's important. All right.
Elle Jones, any final?
Are you related? I've never asked you, Warren. Are you related to the Clarks out here, or is it through a different?
I'm certain. I've heard I'm related to. I have family out in the East Coast, so I'm applying for a tenure track job out there. So we'll see.
Are you flying at the Mount?
Pardon me?
Are you flying at the Mount?
Yeah, I am. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm making it public. So whoever's listening at the Mount.
So hopefully we'll be calling.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm just trying to finish this doctorate and just
the
go.
East Coast.
We'll see.
Get ready. We're
in 4 positions, so it's not like we're in competition. It's but an abundance of.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say, like for those who are applying for, tenure track positions under the Black Scholarship Call, there is this idea that there is an abundance of Black scholars, and that's not true.
I know. How are they going to fill them all?
There's only few of us, because if you think about formal education, there's already barriers for many of us to even get to the undergraduate level. There's barriers to get to the master's graduate level, and then there's certainly barriers to get into the PhD graduate level. So that's why education is so important. If we're going to change this narrative, parents who are listening, guardians who are listening, young people who are listening, choose post-secondary education. I get it. Not everybody, academically, inclined, and I, want to go to the trades and all sorts of stuff. I understand college. I get it, but we need more of you going into academia. If you're interested, you need my help, just email me. I'm going to put it out there. I do a ton of mentorship programs in Ottawa. I like Cesar in Ottawa, Elle's out in Nova Scotia doing her thing. But reach out to us if we can help in any which way. Sorry, I'm signing Elle and Cesar up here. If we can help in any which way when we have the time, I would love to do so. So I'm putting it out there. Thank you.
Warren, off air, hit me up. I can give you a bit of I call it the mount, right? So I can give you a bit of a guide to the mount before you get your application. So give me a call.
Okay. How can people get in touch with you, Elle?
So email el.jones@msvu.ca.
All right, Cesar. Any last comments from you, Cesar?
As last thought, what I would say is we live in very interesting times. We live in it's kind of like, and I mean this, of course, with the utmost respect to our older brothers and sisters, but it's almost like the 1960s 2.0 for us in this generation without the nature of violence over there. Just before I give my last thought, I'd just like to share some knowledge very quickly, as Brother Warren was talking about academia, by answering to Sister Niyi Soni Bizi in terms of, do we have to be black though, since the concept of blackness derives from the white settled colonial discourse. Brothers and sisters, I may surprise some of you here, but African people knew they were black before white people said it. From 5,000 years ago in Kemet, ancient Egypt, which is an African civilization that comes from the inside of the continent, as they wrote themselves, the very word Kemet, the very land of blacks, we knew we were black before the Greeks, the Romans, and eventually Western Europeans named us so. Even after that, long after that, you go back to just the 18th or 19th century. So it's the 19th, 18th century. This is taught at the University of Delhi in India. The Aryans, the whites, those who became whites in the area of the Iranian plateau, when they started to invade the Dravidians, they fully knew they were black, as they referred to themselves already. And as such, these concepts of whiteness came to be created. And even in terms of Europeans, when you look at the history of art, so art history, notably through painting, I have a book from the Museum of Florence here. It explains how colonization following Christopher Columbus, but even before that, Pope Nicholas II in 1443, how the idea of slave equaling to black changed the nature of painting in the depiction of black people as evil, dumb, lazy, etc. But even before that, black people, we refer to ourselves as blacks, just as in terms of our ethnicity, aka tribes. As last word, as Warren said, indeed, the education is there. Now, don't get it twisted. If you go do trade and college, congratulations to you. Warren is not minimizing the importance of that, but always keep an African, a black spirit, as your community needs you, in the same sense as all other communities call their own first and foremost, to give them jobs, to help them succeed. I would like to say, as we are finishing, 2021 is indeed a year that seems so far as the 13th month of 2020, but it's an opportunity for us to always increase our knowledge, always increase our activism, and also increase our sense of belonging, of basically, am I my brother, my sister's keeper? Yes, you are. yes, you are responsible, because whether you be mixed with green eyes and blonde hair, or you be dark skinned like Midnight from Sudan or Senegal, guess what? Whether your name is Trevor Martin or Diallo, who got murdered in 1999, or Abdirahman Abdi, and etc., 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 in the four corners of this world, from Japan, Naomi Osaka, to the US, to Brazil, I wish for my people, Ubuntu, I am because you are, and Sankofa. We keep advancing without never forgetting the past. We keep advancing without never forgetting the past, because I am because you are. Ubuntu and Sankofa to all of my sisters and my brothers. Welcome to 2021.
Contact information?
President at rootsandculturecanada.com. But to be quite honest, I'm easier to reach on Facebook, aka, as so many Black activists, I am blocked right now for comparing the Lives Matter protest to today. So I'm blocked until midnight, just to let you know. So as of Monday, we get back into action. But my Facebook, Cesar space Rimy, R-I-M-Y space Emery, E-M-E-R-Y. Easiest way to communicate with me. But of course, we always stay in touch.
Excellent. So everyone, whether you're watching live on the replay or listening on the replay, you see why I miss them? Make sure you check them out and support them wherever you can. I am Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Podcast News Award winner and 2018 Innovation Award given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also note, once a month I host the only online broadcast for fathers and men in the world that is sponsored by Dove Men Care and also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who watched this live on the replay or listened on the replay. I'd like to give a big shout out to BIA Media for the production. And as always, I close out with this: live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller, get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. I'd like to thank Elle, Warren, and Cesar. We need you, and we're glad to have you back and looking for another eventful and positive 2021. And love, faith, and respect. Goodbye, everybody.